Welcome to What's New in MLA Style. In April 2021, the Modern Language Association published the 9th edition of its MLA Handbook. Periodically, the MLA updates its style guidelines for writers in the humanities, which include writers in English and first-year composition classes. I'm Michelle Clark. I'm an editor at Bedford St. Martin's and a teacher of first-year writing, and I'm going to give you an overview of what's new in the 9th edition. First off, you should know that we've published a brief booklet of the new MLA guidelines based on the 9th edition. It's located on our community page and available to package with all of our English titles for fall 2021. Talk to your sales rep if you want to package your title with the booklet. They'll give you the right ISBN. So let me answer the big question first. Does this revision of the MLA Handbook represent an overhaul or a major update? In my opinion, no, and let me tell you why. The 2016 update introduced containers, an entirely new metaphor for understanding, gathering, and grouping publication information for the purposes of citation. The container method was an attempt to provide a framework for citing an endlessly growing number of types of sources, especially online sources. And it was an attempt to promote flexibility, adaptability, and critical thinking. The 2021 update is a refining of that system with many, many more examples. The basic metaphor hasn't changed. Here are the changes we'll talk about today, changes that we're incorporating in the booklet and most of our English titles as well. Formatting changes, changes related to online sources and social media, and changes related to language. We'll deal with just basic formatting in this video. Tune in to part 2 of What's New in MLA Style for a review of the other topics. The first formatting change deals with how to set up an essay. For group or collaborative projects, MLA recommends a title page with all students' names in the heading. You see one here with the writers' names, professor, course, date, and a centered title. The title page is not numbered, but interior pages are, with all writers' last names in the running head. There are no changes to formatting a heading for an essay by a single writer. MLA previously gave no guidance for headings in the body of an essay, and now they do. They recommend headings for long or complex essays to guide a reader's experience. Students who have multiple levels of headings are asked simply to style them consistently. Separate advice is now given for tables and figures. A table is a table, and a figure is basically any other kind of visual, a photo, a diagram, or a map, for example. Tables are given a number and a title and are styled as shown here. A caption gives the source information. Figures are given a figure number and a caption, and the caption can be descriptive or can present source information as shown in this example. If full source information is given in the caption, no entry is needed on the works cited page, and that's new. If you ask your students to submit annotated bibliographies, the formatting has changed. The annotation paragraph is now styled as a block and is indented a full inch from the margin. Okay, now let's look at citations within the body of a student's work. One significant change is that when students include a longer corporate or group author name or a longer title, they're instructed to use a shortened form of the name or, for an unknown author, the title, in a parenthetical citation. They should choose the shortest noun phrase, basically the first noun and any preceding adjectives. No more abbreviations like DEPT for department. Here are some examples of shortened author names and titles. Now, in signal phrases, writers are still expected to use a corporate author's full name. Note that I use color in this video for emphasis only. Students should not set any part of their citations in bright green. For 3 or more authors, MLA requires et al. In a parenthetical citation. But MLA gives some flexibility in a signal phrase, as you can see here. And I really like this change for recognizing the contributions of an entire research team. Okay, we're still talking about formatting. Let's look at a handful of major changes in the formatting of works cited entries, citations at the end of a student's work. MLA now wants lowercase for seasons. You can see summer 2020 in this model. For DOIs, writers are now required to present them in URL form, starting with HTTPS. For government reports, fact sheets, data, and other government sources, writers have two options. The first one is very straightforward: present the author as it is listed in the source. The second choice is to standardize the entries by starting with the name of the government and any departments or sub-agencies. This is the method that's better for writers who are using multiple government sources and want to consolidate them in the same area of the works cited page. In email and personal communications, MLA requires the format for the communication, but no subject lines or titles. Now, these are the kinds of sources that cannot be readily accessed by the reader or another researcher. MLA is doing less with labeling. The new guidelines are to use a label only when the title or the author doesn't make the type of source clear. For example, in this model at the top, the title of the map collection makes it clear that this is a map. In Model 2, though, we need the label. In the third model, it's clear from the authorship that this is an editorial opinion piece. In Model 4, we need the op-ed label. Tune in for Part 2 of What's New in MLA Style to learn about changes in guidelines related to citing online sources and social media, and guidelines related to using language. Just a reminder, you can check out Bedford St. Martin's Documenting Sources in MLA Style on our English community page. Thanks for watching. Welcome to Part 2 of What's New in MLA Style. I'm Michelle Clark from Bedford St. Martin's. We publish textbooks for English and for composition. This summer, we're publishing a supplement that captures the most significant changes in MLA style as set forth in the Modern Language Association's 9th edition of the MLA Handbook. In Part 1 of this series, I gave an overview of some basic formatting changes in MLA style, changes to the setup of an essay and to both in-text and end-of-text citations. In this video, we'll look at changes related to online sources, social media, and language. Now, it's no surprise that so many of our students get their sources exclusively online, and more writers are citing sources from social media. So let's look at MLA guidelines for formatting works cited entries for these kinds of sources. There are a few changes to report. First off, let's talk about URLs. The guidelines say to copy the URL directly from the browser. It's okay for the URL to be a live hyperlink if students plan to deliver their work in digital format and want readers to be able to click on the links. MLA says that short lines before a URL are no problem, even if the lines look a little unbalanced. The accuracy, according to MLA, is more important than the appearance. In the previous edition, deleting the protocol was mandatory. MLA has now made it optional to delete the protocol. That's the HTTPS, if writers or their readers don't want live links. MLA allows publications such as textbooks to introduce line breaks so that the lines look even. That's what we do in our booklet of MLA guidelines and in most of our English textbooks. Our models will mostly look like the second example, but some will look like the first. Note that I use color in this video for emphasis only. Students should not set any part of their citations in bright orange. When a URL is more than 3 lines, as can be the case with some sources from databases, MLA recommends truncating the URL and retaining the host. In this case, the host is my college's Gale database. MLA recommends avoiding shortening services such as Bitly. Works cited entries for social media posts have special rules about how to style the author name. MLA requires the account or display name, followed by the user's social media handle in brackets. You can see examples here for individuals as well as one for a group. Most social media posts don't have a traditional title. So in the title position, writers in most cases are asked to put the text of the post in quotation marks. When citing a visual post or focusing on a visual element of a post, writers are asked to offer a description, and you can see that in the second example here. Most online videos are treated like short works from websites, and that you're required to give the author or speaker the title, the website, the date, and the URL. Now, a lot of students view TED Talks and YouTube videos as part of a research project. If a student views the video on the TED site, the citation would look like the first example here. If they view the video on YouTube or another sharing site, they need to include the uploader as part of the citation. All YouTube citations include the uploader as a contributor who is separate from the main author or speaker. The MLA Handbook was developed during COVID, and what were we all doing during COVID? Streaming shows and podcasts. Too many for me, I'm embarrassed to admit. MLA has new guidance for episodes and for whole series. Writers are required to include information about where they access the work, either on a website or an app, and they're required to give season and episode numbers, unless they're citing an entire series, which is shown here in the third example. Within the body of an essay, students should be citing words and ideas that they borrow from social media posts, just as they do for other sources. Students should use the account name, whether it's a traditional name like Roxanne Gay or a pseudonym like Grammar Girl. A handle with an @ sign should not be used in an in-text citation. As shown in these examples, the author names can be placed in a signal phrase or they can be placed in parentheses. Neither source has page numbers, so there's no need to include pages in parentheses. Let's turn now to language concerns, our third topic in the series. The MLA Handbook features a brand new chapter in its 9th edition, Principles of Inclusive Language. I'll quickly mention 4 new guidelines. First, when the dictionary gives 2 stylings for a term such as black or deaf, MLA advises writers to choose one, be consistent, and be mindful of their audience's preferences and expectations. Second, MLA includes guidance about how to quote a source that includes a potentially offensive or inflammatory term. Writers do not have to reproduce the term in their own work if doing so would be painful or problematic for them or for members of their audience. MLA's advice is to use a dash after the first letter of the term. Third, MLA is on board with this idea that pronouns matter. And although they give some pretty conservative advice to revise in order to avoid pronouns when possible, the organization does embrace singular they as, quote, a tool for making language more inclusive. Writers are advised to use it for individuals who use they, them, and their as their pronouns, and are now allowed to use it for singular third-person generic nouns. Progress! And finally, here's more new guidance about pronouns. MLA promotes audience awareness by advising writers not to assume that their audience shares their culture, identity, background, or beliefs. And to that end, the advice is to avoid using the pronouns we and our. If writers use those pronouns, the guideline is to ask whether their language is clear about who we is, who's included. Well, that does it for our second segment of What's New in MLA Style. Be sure to visit us in the English community, where you'll be able to access our new MLA booklet, as well as teaching tips, webinars, classroom resources, and posts from our authors on our Bits blog. And talk to your rep if you're interested in packaging the booklet with your Bedford St. Martin's title for the 2021 academic year. I'm Michelle Clark. Thank you for watching.